Hello. It's the 14th of February. You might have watched that last episode of Fruit for Thought. But friends, the only apple in my eye today is the talent that's developing here in North America, as we'll be kicking off the second Proving Grounds Open qualifier here on the Unified Live Twitch channel. Once again, I'm Grapes. Lovely to have you alongside us here as we go through this journey. And here, along by my side, is Hawk.
Oh, I'm sorry, Grapes. I didn't see you there. I just want to take a moment to shout out everybody on this Valentine's Day, all you out there that are watching Proving Grounds instead of hanging out with your significant others, or better yet, doing both at the same time. But we all know here at Unified Live that NA talent is our one true love on this Valentine's Day. Grapes, wouldn't you agree?
I mean, you phrased it perfectly here, Hawk. Beautifully, even, as we are just so excited to get into the action today. The OQs are back. Proving Grounds has begun. Hope you're all excited for Amateur as much as we are. We got 5 games in the next 2 days that we'll be covering over here to get the 16 teams to re-enter the Proving Grounds circuit qualifiers for that chance to get into that all coveted PG. But in order to explain the format here in terms of what will be happening throughout today and tomorrow, we have a short video by our good friend Jolly to explain the format here of the OQ. Take a look.
Welcome to the Proving Grounds Circuit Qualifier number 2, presented by Unified. 32 teams will face off in a 5-round Swiss Open qualifier to decide who will advance to the 16-team group stage. The Swiss format matches teams with the same record against each other as the rounds progress, meaning in round 2, the 1-0 teams will play each other while the 0-1 teams play each other, and so on. The 16 teams to reach 3 wins by the end of round 5 will move on to compete in groups where they will be seeded based on their records and play in a best of 3 double elimination bracket to decide who will advance to the playoffs. The playoffs will be single elim best of 3 matches up until the grand final best of 5 series. Teams will earn points based on their overall performance. Here's how the numbers break down. The top 10 amateur teams across the 2 tournaments will qualify for Proving Grounds. Got it? Good. The action starts soon, so make sure you catch all the games at twitch.tv/academy and the Unified Twitch channels. Which of these aspiring champions will rise to the top in 2022? Come see for yourself.
Thank you very much, Jolly, and hopefully all of you are enlightened a little bit in terms of what's going on today. But if you are just joining us here for the first time this season, we have had another one of these tournaments before, and if we could take a look at that point distribution, we can see which of the teams are already in the good spots moving forward here as we continue to go through the tournament. Obviously, 100 Thieves Next is a team that a lot of people were expecting to do well, and they certainly delivered, leading the charge with 125.
Yeah, I mean, 100 Thieves Next had an absolutely insane tournament. I think something came over us there in the intro, Grapes, but the last tournament was absolutely insanely exciting to watch. Immortals AoE and Winthrop getting points as well for making the semifinals, as well as going down the list there. And it is worth noting, too, Immortals AoE actually having 5 more points than Winthrop due to the fact that you get 5 points for each of the open qualifier wins that you get. Immortals AoE, they finished 4-1. Meanwhile, Winthrop finished 3-2 in that open qualifier. So the games that you see played today, not only are you playing for a chance to get into the main group stage, you are playing for those all-important championship points, and those tiebreakers can be very influential down the line.
Yeah, and as we can see, the points are really close as we get down there. Of course, I believe it was Bay State at that 10 spot, kind of on the bubble here with teams like Supernova and UCI looking to get up into that next stage with a good performance here in this second tournament. It all starts right here in the OQs. Obviously, we have these 13 teams that have earned some of these points that are on the bubble looking to go through, but there are 32 total teams making their appearance here in the PGCQ. Obviously, a lot of the teams that we mentioned before are here. Some interesting new additions are, of course, Bogged, listed at the number 5 seed with a lot of very familiar names alongside some other players here like the Maryville Secret Weapon Squad.
Yep, lots of familiar faces coming through, but like you mentioned, there's a few upstarts coming back. Maybe the promise of Champions Queue is getting some veteran players back into the competitive spirit here in Proving Grounds to reclaim that fame that they so desire, and to prove themselves that they are still some of the best that North America has to offer. And these 32 teams are the best that North American amateur and collegiate have to offer. So many incredible faces, old and new, that we get to see today.
And in terms of who we are going to be seeing today, we have our list of matchups as well. Of course, as teams were seeded 1 through 32, they each will be playing each other in this round 1. And after that, as Jolly explained, the Swiss bracket will sort of commence as we decide to hand seed the teams after the rounds have concluded to decide who ends up playing against each other next. Some important matchups to look out for here, especially on twitch.tv/unified2. Gotta go watch DJ and RMC call the game of Radiance versus Grandview. But Hawk, I think after this list of matchups, got to take a look at our main game that we have on the stream today for our round 1 in No Team versus Winston, King of Amateur. And No Team listed at that number 3 seed, going against the 30 seed here of Winston. But, I think as we sort of take a look at some of the rosters that we have here, it's a little bit closer than the numbers might suggest.
Oh, absolutely. It's closer than the numbers might suggest. I mean, No Team came in last tournament, a bunch of players that couldn't really find a team and played extremely well. And then meanwhile, Winston, King of Amateur, yeah, they might be seeded 30. There is an objective criteria, right, for the seeding. A lot of these names haven't really showed up in the competitive scene in a while, so they were seeded much lower. They are the kind of players that can absolutely pop off and cause some problems for even the higher level teams in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. But as we said, No Team had a very good performance in the first Proving Ground Circuit qualifier. And I know, Hawk, you were very excited about one of their players specifically, their jungler, the 15-year-old prodigy himself, Griffin, making some impacts around the Rift so far in the last tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Griffin has just been absolutely popping off. This is his stats from the first tournament, the PGCQ number 1, 2.67 KDA, 80 nearly % kill participation. That is the highest the highest out of all junglers in the main stage, as well as the gold share for his team was the highest of all junglers. And then also, I want to draw your attention to the stat at the bottom. Unique champions played at 8. That is alone in first place among all junglers as well in the main stage of PGCQ number 1. So Griffin can play a lot of different champions. He gets a lot of kills. He gets a lot of gold and makes extremely good use of that grapes.
Which is very impressive, especially just when we consider that we're here at the precipice of NA developmental. Griffin, only 15 years old, entering his first year of competitive play and already showing that not only is he incredibly mechanically gifted, but also, taking a bit of a role in terms of communication throughout his team as well. When you take a look at the rest of his roster, you have players like Dragoon, Scooped, and Jashuka who have been around the scene a lot, but it's actually been Griffin who's been facilitating a lot of these conversations throughout their run.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I reached out to Griffin to talk about the games today and the tournament as a whole, and I was asking about how he feels about being sort of the carry for his team. I think a lot of people would point to him as an incredible superstar on this No Team lineup, at least from his first competitive tournament just last month. And now, he's telling me that he's the one that typically leads comms, and that's how his team sort of plays around him. Is if he wants to play a carry, he's able to lead the team, to facilitate him. And then likewise, if he wants to play a more supportive style, then he can communicate effectively to his laners what he's trying to do to get them going. And I think that's incredibly impressive given the veterans, like you said, on this roster, Grapes, and this No Team lineup as a whole, with the talent that they have, and seeing that they're led by this 15-year-old jungler is incredibly exciting.
And I'm so excited to see how they end up progressing moving forward. Obviously fell in the quarterfinals in the last tournament against Golden Guardians Academy. I know you were covering that series a little bit, Hawk, and it was pretty close. No Team did end up taking that game, but now with some of the competition gone, GGA no longer a part of this event, and also just with these players getting more and more time to practice together, really excited to see how they will be matching up in this first round against Winston, the Kings of Amateur. And Hawk, obviously this is a team that, we haven't covered before because they are just a brand new team entering this Proving Ground season for the first time. But if you take a look at some of the names on this sort of roster. A lot of familiar faces from some of the previous amateur splits that we've had. We have Modified in the top lane, Infectrix in the jungle, Sudsy, Good Boy, and Claritz to round out this team. And these are players that have been around for a long time and now are just re-entering for another chance to compete.
Yeah, if you've been around, you've heard of these players. All of them have had their time in the amateur scene, absolutely. And even though they haven't really been a part of the conversation for the last few months, they are back. And like we said, they may be seated at 30th, but this is a team that absolutely, I think, is in the conversation for the top 16 for making that main group stage. And especially, we've got some interesting little rivalries, Grapes. Sudsy, of course, was the mid laner on the Revival squad last year alongside Scooped and Jashuka. So a little bit of maybe friendly banter back and forth. I think Sudsy was looking to beat up on his old bot laners.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting one that I kind of want to bring up a little bit more as we're about to get into the draft. You know, Sudsy in the mid lane here, formerly of Revival in 2021, a team that did relatively well throughout some of the beginning tournaments of the Proving Ground circuit in that previous year, finishing second in the second Tier 2 tournament in the spring. Alongside his teammates there in Scooped and Jashuka, formerly known as Plux. And Sudsy has been a player that has, really been very mechanically gifted, very highly regarded in the amateur space for such a long time. I reached out to him and asked, even though you took some of this break, are you still expecting to be at the top? And he said, absolutely yes. So I definitely think this is a matchup that we have to watch out for as he goes up against Blaze.
Absolutely. And speaking of Blaze too, I think it's going to be a really key mid lane matchup to watch, because I think it's fair to say that Blaze is definitely someone that there's a lot of question marks surrounding on this no team roster. Typically has been very consistent in the mid lane, but I think he has struggled against some of the higher caliber mid laners in PGCQ number 1. So coming into the tournament PGCQ number 2, it'll be interesting if Blaze comes out with any sort of different sorts of playstyles, and B, if he's really able to keep up with, right off the bat, a mid laner of the caliber of Sudsy. Of course, seeing the mid lane meta has changed a little bit. We do still have a lot of the control mages that we saw last month. Victor, things like Corki, Syndra, etc. But there's also, we've got the mages, the enchanters being played in some academy and professional games. Church of LS has been having some of that stuff crop up. I also think there is some room for a little bit more aggressive picks as well. And so I'm really interested to see if Blaze will adapt his playstyle in any sort of way up against Sudsy, or if we will be seeing standard mage against mage, and if he'll be able to keep up against this very talented mid laner.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point that you bring up there, especially when we were talking about Griffin earlier on in the pregame as being one of the more main carries here of this team, and he's the one who ends up making a lot of these plays. But it is Blaze who is there to help Griffin facilitate going around the map, especially towards that bottom side of Scoop and Jashuka. So expect a lot of attention around this mid-jungle matchup as we head into game. And on the other side, though, obviously Sudsy, still a very talented player in his own right, but alongside some other very strong players as well. It's important to note that 3 out of the 5 players that we have here on the side of Winston, King of Amateur, were on LCS affiliate teams at some point throughout the summer Proving Ground split. Didn't end up making it through the end of the season as other roster changes ended up happening and going through, but definitely being in that sort of environment has helped some of these players grow and learn again with some of these higher level talents in the coaching departments.
Right. These players have been around. They are all veterans. So this level of competition will not be strange to them. They will be coming in knowing exactly what to expect, knowing what is expected of them in this game. And I think it's fair to say that this might even be a little bit of redemption time for the players of Winston, King of Amateur. Like you said, there was a lot of changes, especially last summer, surrounding some of these players. And I think now they're coming back to prove here in 2022 that these are still extremely talented and very good players that teams should be looking at. And I think up against no team in this first round will be a colossal test for them, but one that I think they could rise to the occasion for.
Yeah, and as we said before, this is the 3 seed versus the 30 seed, so You know, in terms of just raw numbers, you would expect no team to come out ahead of this one, but you really don't know what to expect, especially with a lot of the talent that we have here on the other side. We're here into the draft for game one. Interesting to note, actually, Winston, the king of amateur, won the coin toss to get side selection, and they ended up choosing that red side. So getting that final pick, trying to get an advantageous matchup in one of their solo lanes.
Yeah, I wonder if this is just Winston, king of amateur, saying, we've got Sudsy, we have a talented mid laner, and throwing down the gauntlet at Blaze, right? We just said, will he be able to keep up? Well, if you're able to get a counter pick mid for Sudsy, that could get even harder for Blaze. But, of course, we do know, Grapes, that I don't think team needs Blaze to pop off. He had the lowest gold share of any mid laner in the main stage of PGCQ, #1. So, no team does not need Blaze to pop off. They have Blaze help the rest of his team pop off, and he's so good at playing that more supportive play style. So I'm interested to see if that kind of thing will come through, and that's why I also mentioned the likes of enchanters. I feel like that could potentially be something in the wheelhouse of Blaze. He's not really been playing it in solo queue or competitive, so it would be perhaps uncharted territory, but I do think playstyle wise it could be something worth considering.
Well, we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition as we have entered the first phase of the bans. Karma taken off the board here as our first ban of this open qualifier. Jinx, the response definitely targeted towards Scoop 2. You don't want to get his hands onto those hyper carries as we round out the rest of the ban phase. Seeing what other priorities lie here. Sudsy is a very prominent Akshan player in solo queue, so not surprised to see that one taken away as well. And on the other side here for Winston, the king of amateur, wouldn't be surprised to see some more targets towards that jungle there, Hawk.
Yeah, really respectful Akshan ban here. This actually signals to me that no team is going to want to pick up their mid laner in the first round of picks here. They're not going to wait till the second phase. I could see something like a Blind Victor, Blind Corki. There's plenty of things that you can play mid lane right now. Blind pick, and I think removing Akshan is them saying, hey, let's get rid of this super oppressive lane bully and protect their mid laner a little bit. And Gwen being banned out. Love this ban from Winston, king of amateur. We've seen Dragoon play a lot of Gwen in his time. Very notable Gwen player. And also, Griffin in solo queue has been spamming Gwen jungle as well. It's really cropped up in the last couple patches as a premier jungler. So not really surprised to see that one removed as a flex pick and a very dangerous carry threat.
Absolutely. Don't want that flexibility, as that it just opened up another reason of why Gwen should be on your ban list here as we, continue to go throughout this draft. Zeri, the final ban in the first rotation for no team. A lot of respect down there towards the bottom lane of Good Boy. Very good Zeri player, definitely has been playing that a lot in solo queue as well as being one of the most strong champions that we have in the current meta. The final ban will be Jashuka's Thresh here, another champion that has been very prominent alongside those hyper carries like the Jinx.
Yeah, Jashuka, very known for his Thresh. Not surprised to see that one banned out. I will say, good luck banning out Jashuka. This man has an insane champion pool down there in support position. Can play both enchanters and tank supports as well, which I think given the meta where both enchanters and tanks are strong, that's a very valuable asset to have a support that can go both ways. But the Aphelios first pick here for Scooped. Not surprised at all to see that one come out. It's pretty much the best hyper carry available. I think Jinx and Zeri getting removed were the two best. And Aphelios, it's just strong. It does a lot of damage, and it's hard to kill.
And I think this is step 1 of 2 in terms of how no team like to play the game of League of Legends. Step 1 is get scooped on something that can carry towards the later stages of the game, and step 2 is make sure that Griffin and Blaze can impact the bottom lane to make sure that Scooped can do the damage on said hyper carry. So we'll see what happens here in the next rotation to see if maybe that mid jungle gets targeted here. But on the other side, Winston, the Kings of Amateur, will be selecting that Ezreal over to Good Boy, another very high specialty pick for this AD carry.
Yeah, I mean, Griffin is a player that I think we can expect to win the early game jungle matchup, especially if he's given a counter pick and this Jarvan is locked in. Griffin is a very, very good early game pather. Typically likes to path to disrupt the enemy jungler if given the opportunity to. And against something like the Jarvan, I think there is a lot of room for that if he's got the dueling potential. And then, even if Griffin doesn't win early game, maybe as hard as you might hope, you've got scooped on the late game insurance of Aphelios, and he can go and do so much work on that pick. So I really like the pickup. I'm interested to see what is locked in for Griffin here. I would expect a jungler to be locked in. I would not imagine that to fall all the way down to second round of picks. Lulu pairing with the Aphelios, strong team fight pick, right? It's Lulu Aphelios. It makes this Aphelios even harder to kill, and I just said that Jashuka likes both enchanters and tanks. Well, there's the enchanter, Graves.
You were talking about, potential enchanters there for Blaze, so we can't rule that out just yet, but I think Aphelios Lulu is a very prominent combo down there in the bottom lane. Griffin will get his hands on that Xin Zhao to round out their first phase of the pick order, and looking towards the other side, that Jarvan, we kind of didn't really go over that too much, but another very prominent pick there for Infectrix, and it's an interesting point, something that we didn't really touch upon as we were entering this draft, entering this pregame. Modified and Infectrix have a history together. They played in spring 2021 on Team Clarity alongside the likes of Ariandel of Supernova, but both of those players were really more oriented towards, playing these hyper farmers and late game carries here. Ooh. So seeing Infectrix on a bit of a more proactive pick definitely is interesting, and to help buff up that Ezreal there for Good Boy, gonna see a Kalarit Soraka.
Yeah, I would imagine this is Soraka support and not blind pick Soraka mid. I'd be extremely surprised if that were the case. And it makes a lot of sense because Aphelios Lulu in its own right is not the strongest lane, and then Ezreal Soraka is just like the ultimate non-interaction lane. You do not get to play the game bot lane anymore with Ezreal Soraka. It is extremely safe and can farm up very well in the later stages of the game. I would say so far, not too many surprises in this draft, Grapes. I'm a little surprised to see the Jarvan 4 come out blind for Infectrix in the first rotation. I do think there's better junglers available, like the Xin Zhao that was picked up for Griffin. But again, if your plan is to get Sudsy ahead of Blaze, well, Jarvan is so good at ganking mid. You can go red buff level 2, you could go red Raptors Gromp level 3. There's so many options that you have available to yourself. You can come flying over multiple walls, flash, knock up, tons of options. So I do think that might be what Winston King of Amateur is sort of signaling here, considering that they have picked a low interaction bot lane as well.
I mean, it wouldn't be a team called the Winston King of Amateur if you didn't have a Jarvan flashing in mid lane at level 2. So that makes a lot of sense here, I would say, as we are rounding out this final ban phase of this first game of the OQs. A lot of target bans towards that top lane. Dragoon, very good set player, very good gangplank player, so seeing those off the board as well, very, very important. And actually, I think this is a sort of swap between Modified and Sudsy. Both of them play the Aurelia to a very good extent. That Yone, obviously a Sudsy target, so we'll see that one taken off the board. Both of the teams have to select their solo laners here, Hawk, and you have to wonder here for Winston, which side do you want to blind pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely blind pick top lane here for Modified. I feel like your composition, everything signaled towards win mid. The way you've been banning out top laners as well shows to me that Winston King of Amateur has something that they want to pick right here and get their hands on. I have been wrong before. Maybe I'll be wrong again with the Victor. Definitely a less interactive pick, actually, than I was expecting. I was maybe looking for something a little bit more pop-off potential for Sudsy, but Victor is an extremely strong champion right now, and it can absolutely carry games as they go later. So I'm not necessarily... I don't think this is a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination, but just maybe not what I was expecting given the way the draft has gone so far.
Yeah, another AP threat here in the mid lane here, always going to be important. Obviously, Sudsy does like playing some of those more aggressive assassin-esque champions. And speaking of, that's an Ahri lock-in for Blaze. It is, of course, that newly reworked Ahri, getting those extra dashes and slashes as she tries to one-shot some of her opponents here. And for Blaze, makes a lot of sense. It's a champion that can get around the map a lot, has a lot of mobility, and can, maybe work really well here with Griffin, provided a lot of early game crowd control to try and snowball some of his side lanes here. And the final pickup for No Team will be that Renekton. So no Darius here blind for the side of Dragoon. Instead, going to be a bit more of a safer option.
Man, we're not going to get treated to Dragoon Darius today, but I'm pretty sure blind pick Darius is not usually the angle, despite how feared Dragoon's Darius is. The Ahri coming through, super exciting pickup. It's been extremely strong since getting its mini rework on the most recent patch. It's been being played in pro and amateur. There's a lot of respect towards this pick now. And I think it's a very, very good acquisition. Ahri hasn't really been meta in forever. Yeah. So it's super cool to see this one come out. And the Renekton, pretty stock standard. The Gnar will have a pretty advantageous lane into it, but it's not going to be Armageddon in the top lane by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and with this Gnar here, of course, sort of a prototypical matchup into the Renekton, can honestly swing either way depending on what ends up happening in terms of just the execution by some of the players. But taking a look at No Team's draft here, Hawk, you have to wonder if maybe their playstyle has sort of differentiated a little bit. Of course, you have Dragoon on a pick here like the Renekton. You have a relatively uninteractive bottom side here with the Aphelios Lulu going up against the likes of an Ezreal Soraka, who's going to be really hard to try and kill. Maybe No Team decided to make it a bit of the Dragoon show here.
Yeah, the Dragoon show, or even maybe a little bit of the Blaze show. Ari skirmishes extremely well, and while yes, I would imagine they're going for that more for Blaze's ability to roam and skirmish with Griffin, a lot of times Ari's most successful when you're able to commit some resources to the mid lane and unlock her. So I'm actually interested to see where Griffin goes in this early game. I don't think you're ever really going to be able to make a play bot lane, but pathing up towards the top side, I definitely think there's playmaking potential there. I'm really looking to see where Griffin passes in this early game. I think the Xin Zhao has good potential in this early game up against the Jarvan. You do generally win the 1v1 as long as Jarvan doesn't get the jump on you with help. But looking at the Gnar Victor picks, I think the early game skirmishes are definitely in favor of no team here.
Yeah, and on to the topic of Griffin, on the Xin Zhao, a champion that, has a little bit more agency in the early game with a trade-off of being less impactful towards that late game. And we were talking about some of the gold share stats that Griffin had throughout the first PGCQ. Might not see as much of that hard carry potential on this Xin Zhao. You, of course, want to have your resources more towards maybe your mid laner and your AD carry in the case of no team's composition. But, of course, Griffin's still going to be very active around the map, using that communication skills to try and get his laners ahead. And this is a kind of deviation of playstyles that maybe would be exciting to see.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because although, yeah, Griffin is not going to want to be the massive resource carry this game, Xin Zhao can definitely scale it pretty well. And looking at the composition for Winston, King of Amateur, they're actually, I feel like, kind of going to struggle to deal with this Xin Zhao even in the later stages of the game. Ezreal, Victor, they don't really want to get in on the Xin. The Gnar loses one-on-one of the Xin unless he's in Mega. And then so that leaves the Jarvan sort of alone to dive in there. And I have to say, again, I'm a little skeptical of this Jarvan pick here for Infectress. If he's able to make early ganks happen, then yes, it's a good Jarvan pick. But that's always the case with Jarvan. I'm just looking towards the later stages of this game. I think they wanted something to sort of lock down this Aphelios, but Aphelios with a Lulu behind, I feel like doesn't care about the Cataclysm maybe as much as you hope. And then Ari can dash out Renekton, can dash out Xin Zhao, has the Crescent Guard to keep him safe, and I just mentioned how your DPS is actually going to struggle to really get in on the Xin. So I'm really looking at this jungle matchup. I think the Jarvan pick is interesting, and then the Xin Zhao maybe a little bit more stock standard, seeing if Griffin's able to make early plays happen or at least facilitate priority for his lanes and walk into the enemy jungle, secure vision, track this J4 in the early game, because I think looking at one item, this no team composition is extremely strong.
Yeah, definitely so. And for Infectrix, of course, impacting those lanes as a champion like the Jarvan, it's going to be probably a bit difficult here just in terms of the matchups that we have on the board. Infectrix, of course, playing on Team SM Amateur in the past, working with side laners in the solo lanes with like Eclipse, who is currently on Dignitas Academy, and of course Doxa now on Taco Gaming. So had some pretty strong solo laners here. I think Modified and Sudsy also very good. We'll see if he's able to impact the map in the same way. But as we're about to get into the game here, quick note before we do so, that bottom lane matchup here, Aphelios Lulu versus that good boy and Clarice Ezreal Soraka. Not the most interesting explosive bot lane that we were talking about here, Hawk, but we did mention how Scooped, can be that late game carry, and I think having a sort of uninteractive lane like this isn't necessarily that bad for a player like Scooped, who has been proven time and time again to be able to perform on some of these hyper carries.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. I don't think this is a bad matchup at all, and I actually think it's interesting in a lot of ways. Maybe just not explosive. Yeah, I'll give you that. But Ezreal Soraka should be able to secure shove at least early on in this lane, due to Aphelios' relatively poor level 1. But yeah, as we mentioned, it's a pretty non-interaction lane. But I doubt the Lulu and Aphelios will ever really get hard outpaced in this 2v2, and I think Scoop will be able to farm up very nicely. And if we've been talking about how we're sort of looking at Griffin to be the early to mid game bridge, you've got an insurance policy in Scooped on this Aphelios. He's got a Lulu behind him, and I think it'll be very tough to deal with. I think looking at these drafts holistically, there's a lot of places that these teams can play around, but no team just seems to me like they have gotten exactly what they want. Whereas Winston, King of Amateur, I think their composition's a little bit more all over the place. Victor really wants close together team fights, as does the J4, as does the Gnar. Ezreal sort of likes him a little bit more spread out. So I'm mostly just looking at, if this game goes later, I'm not sure that the scaling, even with the Soraka, will be enough.
Yeah, and not necessarily surprising to see out of Winston, King of Amateur. Of course, this team just getting together. I believe Modified was actually the one who set it up, and they actually finalized the roster, I believe, 2 days before that deadline. So haven't had too much time to scrim in comparison to No Team, who have played an entire tournament together, making it to that knockout stage. So it will be an interesting matchup. Of obviously, No Team being the higher seed will be favored here, but there's some exciting players here. If things go awry for No Team early on, it would be a really big upset to start off the open qualifier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's basically, can this Jarvan, can Sudsy, can they make enough happen, or is No Team going to have the proper team play that they had in PGCQ number 1? Is Griffin going to have the pop-up performance that he had in PGCQ number 1? Only time will tell, Grapes.
As we are here on to the Rift, welcome to the second Proving Grounds Open Qualifier. No Team going to try to continue off of their good run that they had in the first tournament, and Winston, King of Amateur, trying to take some names here as the new kids on the block. Not too much interaction here in this level 1, standard 5-point. No Team wants to get off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, no shenanigans in this early game. Now, the level 1s for both teams aren't exactly the most impressive, but what's really going to be important is where these junglers start. 2 proactive early game junglers, and I think a pretty clear lane that they may want to play around in the top side, either top lane or mid lane. I think bot lane, as I said, will be low interaction. So expecting both junglers to start on the bottom side and path up towards top unless any level 2 shenanigans come through, but what will really dictate the tempo of this matchup is who gets priority, who can get into the river first to take control.
And right off the bat, we see the jungler started towards that bottom side, so that focus towards the Renekton Gnar lane, as you predicted, Hawk, will likely be in tow, as it'll be interesting to see what happens here. You know, Dragoon and Modified been around the scene for a while, probably have played a lot of these lane matches before, whether it be in competitive or solo queue. Have some junglers to potentially impact this one here as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Renekton Gnar, I feel like at this point has been the El Clasico of top lane for the last couple years. You know, Renekton, very strong lane bully, good juggernaut, team fights pretty well, and Gnar, a little bit more split push focus, does well into it. So I'm sure both these players no stranger to this matchup whatsoever. Gnar should be able to secure early shove up against the Renekton, but you need to be careful about getting traded on hard, as Renekton will outdamage you if he gets on top of you.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can see the early poke coming out from Modified here. Dragoon trying to try to get something back with the healing that he's able to collect there on that empowered Q. Speaking of Jarvan, no early Winston-esque ganks for the Winston King of Amateur squad. Going to be just that standard bot side clear, hitting that level 3. Again, probably going to impact that top side. As it looks like Infectrix will actually get the better end of that early clear, obviously. Griffin starting off the Krugs, bit of a slower camp to take early on.
Yeah, most junglers clear their blue side faster than their red side, so this isn't particularly surprising. It should be pretty even by the time the junglers finish their entire clear. It does seem like they're both skipping their 4th camps to go directly to their buffs, and no, Griffin actually going to make an appearance on the top lane. Pings are coming down, but there is a great ward here, as both junglers, in fact, are up on this top side to facilitate the crash of Dragoon.
Yeah, it seems like Winston King of Amateur knows what's going on, but take a look at the top side. Modified, chunked to below 100
Slow.
HP just off of Dragoon's lane presence alone. Griffin's going to try to chase in, but going to run straight into the eyes of Infectrix. Will flag and drought out to safety, but still, a lot of pressure already built into the top side of the map for No Team.
Yeah, but remember, Griffin actually wins the one-on-one against this Jarvan. However, mid-priority is another story, and I do believe the Victor was just barely getting shoved on this already. So it will be Griffin just backing out. He is down a camp, but Dragoon actually taking press the attack on this Renekton to go for those really heavy empowered W trades. I'm sure that's how Modified got that low. Flash and TP now burn.
Yeah, already using both of those summoner spells and actually getting back to lane with only about half HP, so will be bit of an interesting story to take a look at in the top lane. Mid lane, though, Sudsy gonna get knocked up here, blocking the gravity well by Griffin, but take a look at Infectrix, forcing the flash out of Blaze early on. So Griffin was trying to get that wave pushed in. Looks like he will get the wish at the end of the day, but it's gonna cost him a little bit more than that.
Yeah, normally you would say that's pretty worth to trade Flash's jungler for mid laner right there, but remember, Blaze will be level 6 in due time, and he'll have that Spear Rush to get out of dodge. Meanwhile, Infectrix, in this volatile jungle matchup without Flash, could potentially get picked off, and even worse, doesn't quite have the same gank threat that he might have had. Now, I was a little surprised to see it. Sudsy with the heal Victor in the mid lane. That one gets forced out by Griffin, and Blaze as well with the Ignite. So both the mid laners expecting a bit of attention towards their lanes.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting matchup to take a look at. Didn't mention it too much in the pregame, but Sudsy think we could say being one of the better players here in terms of just pedigree in recent years on this Winston King of Amateur squad. Up against Blaze, who, as we said before, has been more of that facilitating presence. So already, it is Sudsy actually getting the better end of the 1v1. And in terms of just raw CS, it is only about 2, so still remaining relatively even. But if Winston are going to try to take this game, seal this upset, maybe take a look towards that mid lane, but back to the top side.
No
Remember,
flash.
Modified has no flash and is becoming Mininar very soon. There comes the Wind Becomes Lightning. Dragoon taking rather low, but Griffin, the one who started it all in the early game, is going to secure first blood.
Griffin is pathing like a madman right now. Full clears his bottom side, then goes to try to dive top. It's thwarted. Then helps his mid laner push out mid. Gets bot crab to protect his hyperscaling AD carry. Then recalls and paths all the way up to top side without doing a camp.
Oh no, Clarice might be in trouble. Has the Ignite on him, and that is Jashuka securing the kill in the 2v2. Scoop has to flash away. Good boy going to get that return. And now it's Lulu versus Ezreal. An interesting matchup, but the health advantage is in terms of the no team support. There it goes. Jashuka becoming the carry down in the bottom side, picking up the double.
Wow, maybe a little closer than Jasuka bargained for. The attack speed passive on the Ezreal doing so much damage. But at the end of it all, it is the 2v2 going in favor of Scooped and Jasuka. 2 kills now onto the Lulu. That Moonstone Renewing is going to be coming online early, Grapes. So now, no team. They're up about 1,000 gold after the great pathing of Griffin and 2v2 on the bottom side.
Ultimate advantage in the mid lane as well for Blaze. Already pocketing that Ignite. Looking to go very aggressive, forcing the flash out. I don't think it's enough to take down Sudsy. Really good usage of that experience advantage. Blaze was chunked out rather low, so won't be able to stick around for long. Once again, it's just no team continuing to push the pressure in all 3 lanes. 1K gold lead for themselves at the 6-minute mark.
Yeah, and Griffin just making sure the wave gets all the way pushed under tower. It's not frozen on Blaze, so really nice piece of work right there. And like you said, no team basically just sending their resources where their priority is. They're not as concerned about picking up every single minion. They want to pull Winston around the map, and so far it feels like they've done that successfully. They've been on the front foot of tempo for, I would say, the most part in this game. Now, Dragoon needs to be a little careful with Jarvan being on the top side, but Modified just megaed out, so won't be available for any potential tower dive, and with the Renekton Ultimate online, would not expect to see too much coming through.
Yeah, Wave not in the best spot either. Modify is going to get a decent amount of trading here, but it's just going to force to leap away. Dragoon going to be potentially keeping this freeze here, maybe just evening it out. Of course, always have the potential to just go for that reset with that teleport advantage, but with Infectrix spending all of his time on the top side of the map, it allows for Griffin to go for the counter invade onto the blue buff, and will be able to get out safely due to the priority that no team have built here in the bottom lane. Jashuka, though, might be a different story. Decent amount of damage coming out from Good Boy, and now Griffin is pushing the tempo here in this bottom side. Good Boy doesn't have that arcane shift just yet. It's Scooped running straight under the tower to try to help out his jungler. There goes the Ezreal. Griffin is absolutely insane.
Well, we talked about Griffin's pathing, Grapes, and we're seeing a full display right here. Jarvan clears a control ward top. It immediately means invade. He's going to get a Gromp. He's going to get a blue buff. And to go in on that fight, to know that the Jarvan hadn't recalled and was coming bottom is so bold right there. Separating the Aphelios away from the Soraka means that the healing can't come through. He finds his second kill of the game. He's going to find a dragon as well. So now no team, they're 2,000 gold ahead. They're going to have a dragon advantage. This is an absolutely incredible early game for them so far.
And you can see the momentum just continuing to build for this squad, of course. Quarterfinal finish, maybe not what they were expecting, just due to the caliber of some of the names on their roster, but of course had that unfortunate seeding matchup against Golden Guardians Academy. They're going to look to try and do a little bit better here in this one, and are already starting off on the right foot, up about 2k gold at this 8-minute mark. It will be that Rift Herald picked up on the top side to trade that dragon for Infectrix, but this Jarvan really hasn't gotten out to the best start.
Yeah, and Grapes, it is worth noting that in Proving Grounds Circuit Qualifier number 1, the 2 teams that, oh, hold that thought, no, Scoop's gonna be okay, but the 2 teams that no team lost to were 100 next in Golden Guardians Academy.
Yeah.
That was the finals in that matchup, as we do see a 2v2 on the bottom side.
Yeah, here comes Scoop with that Moonlight Vigil. Has a whole lot of range with that Caliber. I'm going to be forcing that Soraka ulti out early. Good Boy still level 5, so no option to retaliate with the True Shot Barrage. Wins in the bottom side as well here for no team. Is Scooped starting to come online.
Yeah, and that is both summoners off to Jisuka for only the Soraka ultimate, which does facilitate a cross-map play, but those are 2 pretty long cooldowns burn. But as I was saying, no team, they lost to the 2 best teams. So although they got out in the quarterfinals, you know, those are the 2 best teams in the tournament. That is the champion and the runner-up, a literal Academy team and 100 next. And I was talking to Griffin, and he said that his goal for this tournament is to make the finals or semifinals, and he said it was
Depending on the
contingent
seeding.
on when they play against 100 Next. So I think that speaks to the caliber of 100 Next, but also the expectation that No Team has. They believe that they are the second best team in this tournament behind the team that took down a literal academy team.
It seems like their confidence is warranted so far in this game, and as well as just being seeded number 3 ahead of teams, like Winthrop that ended up making the semifinals ahead of them. So things are looking good for them so far throughout the OQ, throughout Proving Grounds as a whole, and also in this game. Gold League just continuing to sort of rise up very, very slowly and methodically here. Doesn't look like No Team want to go for anything too aggressive that might end up, costing a bit of an early throw. Of course, the players on this Winston King of Amateur squad are still very potent and can still do a lot if they get some gold in their pockets.
Yeah, we're starting to see a pretty substantial CS lead open up in the top side here off of that freeze that we saw Dragoon acquire a few minutes ago. So the gold lead has gone up from about 2,000 since we last checked to about 2,500, and a lot of it is coming off that top lane farm. So Dragoon, although he gets counterpicked here on the Renekton, feeling very comfortable in this matchup. And I mean, a top laner of the caliber of Dragoon, it's not surprising. As we see a 4v3
Griffin
on the bottom
in
side.
a 1v3, popping the Crescent Guard to just split up the entire Winston lineup.
Wow.
There goes Kalirich, and there goes Infectress onto the backside as well. Good boy going to be going down to the double kill of the hands of Griffin. 4-0-1 on this Jin Zhao. This 15-year-old jungler is just continuing to take over.
Yeah, 4-0-1. Grapes, we asked the question of whether or not Blaze would get priority in this mid lane. Well, it turns out the first time he gets priority mid, he roams down and parties in the bot lane. They don't give a damn that Infectress is behind. Immediately jumping on Clarice. Remember, no Soraka ult available. Griffin flashing in. Crescent Guard takes him down. And then on the other side, the dive is there. 3 kills picked up on the bottom lane. And all of a sudden, this game is blown wide open.
Yeah, and Winston gonna try to get something back here with this Rift Herald into the mid lane. Shuka and Blaze are here to try and defend, but doesn't look like they're gonna get anything off of that. And that's just the No Team formula here, Hawk. Remember, it was just get scooped on a late game carry and just allow Griffin and Blaze to roam down to that side of the map. And we saw that absolutely perfectly here. Dragoon doesn't need the attention. He's up 20 CS. If you take a look at the gold, it is just the scooped and Griffin show right now.
Yeah, and what a beautifully designed play from No Team. They knew exactly where to go. They knew that they could kill the Soraka. Griffin, it doesn't matter that Soraka has exhaust. It doesn't matter that she has flash. That Xin Zhao can chase her down if she has no way to heal herself. And then once it's in the 4v2, the carries are separated. Infectrix and Good Boy promptly drop. And the gold lead has just ballooned to over 3K, and it's only 12.5 minutes in. This Xin Zhao, remember, highest kill participation among main stage junglers that played more than 5 games. 4-0-1.
Oh, and it's just a bit
Oh
brutal
my.
at this point. Infectrix getting through all the heals and everything, but the
Ultimate.
Wild Growth says, no, you cannot escape. Griffin now unstoppable.
He's just walking in. He knows he's fed. He's got the Gore Trigger online. Clarice is
Under
gonna
the
die.
tower. They're just literally going under the tower here, not even destroying that first brick, and they don't need to. Scoop doing the job by himself.
Yeah, and now Scoop doesn't even need to kill this tower if he doesn't want to. He can deny the farm from Good Boy as much as he wants. He's going to wait until the last minion falls. So his CS lead now ballooning to 20 on this Aphelios. We talked about the late game insurance carry, 2, 1, and 3. Dragons now on the map. Everything just going the way of No Team. This is the 3 seed Team Grapes. This is the team that believes they can make finals, and they are proving why.
Yeah, definitely so. And this is the caliber of a team that I think we were expecting out of No Team. And it's not like any of our expectations were really put down to the ground just yet. It is that 2-0 Dragon lead for themselves as the Mountain Rift decides to form here. Blaze has been rather quiet other than that mid lane roam, but has still, been doing his job maintaining CS over the likes of Sudsy. Sudsy hasn't really gotten off onto the map too much, but it's hard to when your laners are so far behind.
Yeah, I mean, it was a standard blind pick victor that we saw come through from Sudsy, and Blaze answers with the Ahri, and although in the early lane, I would say Sudsy was maybe getting the better of Blaze a little bit, it was never substantial enough to really warrant any pressure, and again, Griffin put time into stabilizing the mid lane as well, keeping things pretty even between the two of them early on, and then once Blaze, he's got his last chapter online, he can pretty much instant clear the wave with the Orb of Deception. It just becomes so easy to then start roaming around and leveraging that skirmishing power of the Ahri.
Yeah, and still, working towards that mythic, but we'll get there soon enough, and doesn't really need it at this point. I think a large part of Ari's power is just A, the base damage, and B, the sort of utility that you're able to come through with your charms and with all the dashes that you have in your kit. So Blaze still definitely going to be an important factor here in this game. Second Rift Herald going to be picked up by No Team. Griffin collecting that one here. Can't really place it top lane because that turret's already gone, as Scoop and Jashuka have swapped their way over to just continue raining havoc in onto the Winston base.
Yeah, I mean, everything's going No Team's way right now. They don't even need the second Herald to kill this top lane turret, which means that as soon as Scooped and Jashuka want to recall, they can just go towards mid lane off the reset, drop Herald. That one will fall. That's going to be 3 outer turrets that were going straight into the back pocket of this Aphelios. So, I mean, Scooped is feeling happy. Griffin's feeling happy. The entirety of No Team is feeling happy. And remember, we were talking about scaling. Yes, Winston, King of Amateur, has Soraka, and the scaling of this champion cannot be understated. But No Team scaling is extremely good in and of itself, and they have a very strong teamfight composition assembled for themselves. And, when you're this far ahead, 6,000 gold at 15 minutes, you're not even really thinking about scaling right now, Graves.
Oh man, just to cancel the recall there, the Moonlight Vigil coming out Scooped. Still is an Aphelios, so it takes a decent amount of damage. That Divine Sunder now completed for Good Boy on the Ezreal. As you start to think about potential win conditions, potential entries back into the game for the Kings of Amateur, probably going to have to come through the likes of Good Boy and Studs. But we talked about earlier in the draft how difficult it will be to take down this front line, especially considering the long range against the Jin Zhao.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult to get through the Xin Zhao, get through the Renekton with a Lulu behind. And then not only that, but you're going to have Ari being a thorn in your backline side as well. She's going to be throwing charms. She's going to be throwing in damage, dashing all over the place. They don't even need the Herald from mid. They're actually going to send a bot lane. Griffin wants 600 gold payday right here for him and Blaze.
It looks like they'll be able to get it rather easily. Sudsy not wanting to do anything here in that 1v2 as the tower has gone down. Make it 3. For the side of No Team, might be 4 in just a little bit, as Scooped and Jashuka raining in on it, as Blaze and Griffin have returned to the mid lane, landing the charm in onto Good Boy, who pops the cleanse. Soraka heal as well to try and disengage. So just the tower going down, but it could have been a lot worse than that.
Okay, I got really excited right there because Blaze predicted the charm on Good Boy, but Clarice was there. So no fun ambulance comes mid and denies Blaze the sick read, but it was cool. And most importantly, No Team is up now 4 towers. Remember when I said they didn't need Herald to get top? Well, apparently they didn't even need Herald to get mid either. And they have been paid, and now they can push up bot wave so insanely far to deny the entire blue side quadrant of Winston, King of Amateur. We already see a couple blue wards down, and Dragon Soul point spawning in a minute. This game just gets so hard to play if you're Winston, because you can't even say, hey, at least they don't have soul, because guess what? 6 minutes from now, that is a very real possibility.
Two-shot barrage. Cancels the back. Not too shabby there for Good Boy. Gonna take the small victories here at this stage in the game, cresting the 18-minute mark. And for a team like No Team, you're up about 8k gold at this stage. Relatively advantageous position, to say the least, for themselves. And now the question is, as this top-level team, a team that, is trying to make it to that final stage, semi-final stage of the PGCQ, how quickly can you close this game out? How cleanly can you close this game out? And I think a lot of that starts around this Dragon setup here.
Absolutely. And Graves, remember, this is a team that we said we're expecting to contend for the top 16. So not only is No Team looking incredible in their first game of Proving Ground Circuit Qualifier number 2 here, they are doing it against a high-quality team. And so that just makes it all the more impressive. And I agree. How quickly can they close this out? How cleanly can they do it? Because I think that will make the argument for their finals run all the more convincing. Griffin was very confident when I talked to him earlier today, and I think I understand why.
I mean, you just love the confidence out of some of these younger players that are here. Players like Griffin, General Sniper as well on 100 next, and they're just so good. And I think there was a couple people around saying that one of the advantages for some of these amateur teams is that you are allowed to pick up these young players, and academy teams can't, just because of the age restriction here. So maybe the team looking to get some of that advantage here alongside 100 next, as Griffin has really proven his worth here in this first game of the OQ.
Yeah, Griffin may be on No Team, but I think he's making a pretty strong argument for why other amateur orgs might want to be on the lookout for this player. I think it's not a hot take to say that he was one of the best performing junglers of the last tournament, and so far, he's performing well once again as Modified is caught.
gonna use a double jump over to buy a little bit of time. Shuka might be in a bit of a dire situation, but Griffin is just unstoppable here in this front line with that Crescent Guard. Infectrix using that Cataclysm defensively alongside the Flag and Drag. A big, actually, Moonlight Vigil coming out from Scoop, but it was just that green gun, so not able to get too much damage off of the rest of that Winston King of Amateur team. After all of that, a bunch of ultimates traded, but nobody ends up falling.
Yeah, and we are seeing a little bit of a taste of what Winston King of Amateur's composition is capable of. Clarit's right there, Soraka, that Wish healing everybody up for quite a bit. So, you know, I would say that's a win for Winston, but they are still down in positioning, and no team says, we are going to start the Baron 20 minutes in. This is on spawn.
Man, poor Baron. Barely got to see any time on the Rift, and he's already getting attacked here 15 seconds since it spawned, and already at about half HP. Jashuka being the lone disengager here to try and get Infectrix away from the pit, but it seems like our good friend the Nash will live to see another day, or at least another couple of minutes, as no team are going to back away.
Yeah, I like that attempt right there from no team to see if they can catch Winston sleeping on their reset. Unfortunately, King of Amateur was not sleeping, and good disengage to not funnel in against the Victor. So, well played by both teams right there. Winston, they managed to buy themselves just a little bit of time in this game, not really giving up anything in that exchange. However, again, Dragon Soul point in 3 minutes means that they'll be forced to stay and fight instead of running away, and I think that will be where their composition really struggles, because I don't believe even with this Rocket they'll have the tankiness to get the full DPS of this Aphelios.
Yeah, and there's just so many threats on the side of no team as well that the rest of these carries on the King of Amateur squad have to be careful of. We're talking about Scoop, we're talking about Griffin, but even Dragoon, I mean, he's a scary crocodile as well. Has the Prowler's Claw. He can one-shot anybody.
Yeah, Dragoon wants someone to die, and that is a completed chainsword as well for Griffin. So, seems like the Xin Zhao going to be the one to spread the healing reduction. I think it makes a lot of sense. Griffin seems to be the one leading the charge a lot of the time for this team. Remember, he is the comms leader for this team, so whether or not he's the one actually calling the plays or not, he's definitely a leader in his own right. The 15-year-old jungler for no team, calling these veterans and, you know, dragging them around the Rift a little bit, and it seems to work out pretty well.
Dragging around the Rift is definitely something that no team has been doing here. I mean, none of the kills have really started to erupt just yet, but it just seems like no team is just continuing to keep their lead in a pretty solid space. Jashuka in a bit of trouble here, but the Moonlight Vigil is going to stun up the Soraka. Clarit's going to go forward and end up falling. Griffin under the tier 2 refuses to die with all the heals. Finally, we're shut down by Good Boy, but what does it cost Winston? Another kill going over, and actually Dragoon falls here. It's a 3-for-2 in favor of the Winston squad, as maybe no team went a little bit too aggressive there.
Yeah, no team goes super deep under the tier 2 tower. Griffin lives forever, but not quite long enough. Eventually dies, but I think the true overdive right here from no team was under the tier 3. Good Boy lives on a sliver of health, and the Dragoon isn't able to clean Sudsy up on the backside, so it actually is a 2-for-3 in favor of Winston King of Amateur. So it starts off Jashuka trying to clear this control ward. Critically, the Flag and the Soraka E are burned there on the Lulu, so it means that Griffin can dive in aggressively, and then the Lulu keeping the front line alive. This is what we were talking about in Draft Grapes, but unfortunately, Dragoon just doesn't really have a way out, as well as the Lulu stepping a little too far forward, taking a little too much damage. So I think in an effort to save their brave jungler, the rest of the team got baited just a little bit. They do get the tower, which I think evens up the trade somewhat, but that's a lot of shutdown gold being given over.
Yeah, and Dragoon actually used the Prowler's Claw in onto Sudsy instead of trying to just finish the job onto Good Boy, so maybe a bit of a misclick there, or maybe just a misinterpretation of how the rest of the team would be able to finish it off. Yeah. But you're starting to see glimpses here of Winston King of Amateur. You know, they have the potential to maybe stay alive for a lot of time with all the healing, and that's Good Boy. Now 3 kills on the Ezreal, able to chunk out Jashuka pretty low, and actually burning that Lulu ultimate very early. This Dragon Soul will be spawning in about 10 seconds. No team has the advantage around the pit in terms of priority, but that's an ultimate burn.
Yeah, that's a huge cooldown. Remember, we saw how long that Griffin was able to live with the Wild Growth. Now it's not available. He's going in, though.
Clarice going in first onto Griffin, but the big charm onto the backside. Soraka is already dead. Griffin continuing to rain havoc in onto the back line, but it's a fight now on multiple fronts, and now Winston has been split up. Modify taken down first. Scoop now on a rampage. He's going to flash over here and finish the job onto Infectrix as well. Blaze landing the final hit and might land another one onto Sudsy as he continues to dash forward. At the end of the day, it's just 3 kills going over, nobody falling onto the side of no team. They say, screw the soul, we're going to head somewhere else potentially.
Yeah, I think no team's gonna try to take them both. The solo laner's gonna clean up the dragon while the rest of them will take the Baron. Grapes, we asked if Winston will be able to survive the full DPS of this composition when they're forced to stand and fight. The answer is no. Griffin fearlessly diving in, finding the Soraka. Blaze finishes off the kill on the Ahri, and after the ambulances... Oh, wait a minute.
Wait, whoa! What's happening? Good boy!
One on the bottom side.
He got the kill onto Dragoon as well. That's the soul denied for at least another 5 minutes, and now start to wonder if no team have, worn themselves a little bit too thin here. The Baron will get picked up, but I mean, a bit of a crucial error there on that side. I think no team maybe overestimated how much they were able to convert off of that play. We're gonna get a quick look to see what happened around that dragon pit, just to see it. Look, good boy here.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely huge. Good boy just does so much damage now. Look at that chunk on the Blaze, and Dragoon is he's just too low. He gets taken out, and then the True Shot Barrage comboed with the Mystic Shot. Good boy finding a lot of value here around the dragon. Grapes, we were talking about Sudsy, but it seems to be the AD carry of Winston, King of Amateur, that is stepping up.
And I mean, don't sleep on Good Boy too much. He's been a
no,
player who's been around the scene, whether it be in NA or up in the Canadian sort of amateur leagues as well, being on Dignitas Mirage for a portion of last season alongside Clarice. So definitely a player that has had a lot of experience, has garnered a lot of a reputation, and is going to have to be that main carry here. But it is still Baron buff into the hands of no team, cresting this 26-minute mark. We're going to try to take a lot of these towers down. Attention probably going to be towards that top side with the outer still in hand.
Yeah, and no team's still in a good spot. Hold that thought.
Oh man, they just want to fight. Griffin so tanky on the backside, and Blaze runs straight into melee range because he will not die. 2 already dead onto the side of Winston, the King of Amateur. Modified picks up 1 onto the Ahri, but it is definitely worth the trade. Scoop's going to Gale Force forward, but not find the Gnar. 2 for 1 in favor of no team. They still have that priority with the Baron buff, and Dragoon is going to go in with a slice and dice and take down the cat as well. Make it 3 now for no team as they're headed into this top lane inner.
Yeah, man, now it's Blaze's turn to dive in so far. Griffin, every single time he sees an immobile target, just jumping on them with his Xin Zhao, because he knows that he cannot die as long as there is a Lulu, as long as he has his ultimate. He just cannot be taken down. And we talked about how a lot of Winston's composition likes a grouped up team fight, but no team is just so good at splitting up the comp. Ahri diving in with her AoE, the Renekton forcing people to step back, and the Xin Zhao ultimate throwing everybody in different directions, jumping on top of somebody. It's just so incredibly difficult to play against, and with this kind of gold advantage, it is oppressive. Griffin, I don't even think he has vision. Blind W sees just sees the laser and jumps in. That is insane. And then Blaze, he knows that his job is just to get damage done. Yeah, he ends up getting taken down on the backside, flash for flash, but it doesn't matter. You found the 2 kills that you were looking for. Dragoon comes in on the other side as well to finish off the Gnar, and ends up being 3 for 1.
There he goes. Never stood a chance back into the mini form, and Dragoon, actually it was his first kill of the game, I believe, so yeah, everyone gets a little bit of that gold share, as it is now 12k in the lead for no team. I mean, as you can see glimpses of the Winston squad, being able to sort of fight back. Of course, Good Boy has had a very good game as well on this Ezreal, trying to keep his team alive.
The minions. They want to bring force.
Yeah, no team. They don't have the Baron buff anymore, but they definitely still have this push. Here comes Griffin going straight in onto Clarice, forcing that early flash. Wish already used Blaze, locking down Good Boy with a charm, but he's forced to cleanse away. There goes the backline. 2 dead, make it a double, a triple here for Scoop. Then could it potentially be more? Modified goes down. It's a quadra kill. Griffin is tanky. Can they go for Good Boy? Has a Divine Sunder, so it's a bit of extra sustainability. No team is thinking about it. They're thinking about it. It's the first game of OQs. Why not? There goes Dragoon. They're going to try to lock down Good Boy. Everybody's dying, but that is it. A pentakill for Scoop to kick off the open qualifiers to the PGCQ. It's a quadra for Good Boy on the other side, but I think there were a bit of other extenuating circumstances behind that one.
Good Boy got a pretty nice assist from the fountain right there, but it's just no team diving into the base. Pentakill for the AD carry. And now poor Clarice is left to deal with all these supers. He's gonna die! No!
I mean, we're at the replay now just to see the dive, but the Nexus might go down just those minions here. Take a look at this.
Mechanical masterpiece, Grapes, as they juggle aggro. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last man standing is Scooped right there. That is a ton of gold that Good Boy just got. That was objectively not worth it, but if you're coming at it from a cool standpoint, it was worth it. And now, 3 inhibitors down, Elder Dragon spawning in 15 seconds. I would say that no team is still in the driver's seat.
By just a hair, I would say. I think it's getting a little close. No, sorry. Nexus is exposed. Believe the Elder will
and
go
Scoop is
down.
fed.
Yeah. Scoop is fed. Good Boy actually has a lot of gold off that quadra kill, so we'll see if that, ends up being the one play that ends up throwing the entire game for no team. Oh, it's not. I forgot.
It's not Elder.
Good Boy stole the dragon.
Soul.
Yeah, so it's a soul. So now some extra durability. Maybe they can dive the fountain, take a couple of extra fountain shots off of this next final potential push here. I mean, I don't think you have to even worry about contesting this Baron buff here, Hawk. I think no team can probably just push for the end.
Yeah, with this Elder Dragon and a Nexus turret, they're just going to walk in and end the game. Clarice has been getting blown up in pretty much every single fight. I would not expect that to change. No flash, no exhaust available as well.
Oh yeah, in fact, he knows the desperation has to happen. Nice stun into the wall actually, but Scoop is just too tanky and he's been left untouched. Jashuka was the only one in danger of dying, but he pops the Wild Growth onto himself. Make it 3 already dead for the side of Winston, King of Amateur once more, as their crowns will surely fall here off of this final push. Charmed in is Sudsy, and down he will go. The Soraka in Clarice will have to watch his Nexus fall, as no team starting off the OQs on the right foot with that win.
Yeah, no team looks so good. They got the soul. I think I said Elder, but they got the soul right there, and it was just... You can't fight into that. The shields make the engage impossible to come through from that Jarvan. There's just not enough follow-up damage. And when you're 13,000 gold ahead, it's just too hard to fight into. But no team in this first game, proving why they are the 3rd seed team, proving why they made quarterfinals in the last tournament, and proving why they want to go even further this time around. An absolutely incredible showing from them. Pretty much from start to finish, they had a handle on that game.
I mean, I can't stop smiling. That was just such a fun game to get to call, get to watch. I mean, and it kind of touched on all the points that we brought in about no team. It is really the Griffin show in the early game. We saw how powerful he was in terms of his proactivity around the map, getting those early leads for himself, getting those early kills, and really pushing the likes of Infectrix and the rest of the Winston squad behind. But then come the end game, come the later stages, Griffin is the one to initiate, but it's Scooped the one to finish off the rest of the kills, getting that penta at the end of the day. Once again, congratulations.
Yeah, and Griffin on the Xin Zhao pathing so intelligently, because he's not pathing to farm up, not necessarily for himself. And that's what you should be doing on a champion like Xin Zhao, is pathing the way that Griffin did, which was for disruption. He wasn't concerned about his own camps necessarily. He wasn't concerned about ganking either. It was about just making Winston King of Amateur always have to respect where the Xin Zhao was on the map, and they just could not keep up. Because, like I said, after that first reset, he still didn't farm his topside quadrant. He didn't farm a topside camp until like 5 minutes into the game. He went and got first blood first. And then, as soon as Jarvan shows on a control ward on topside, later on, because now the junglers are mismatched, he uses that to walk in and steal away his entire bottom side, get a kill, and get a dragon. I mean, to take that much off of that and to path that intelligently from such a young player, it's just absolutely incredible to watch. And the way his team responded to it was beautiful. Blaze having a good game. Remember, first time he got prio, they 4-manned bottom side. Insane stuff from no team in game number 1.
And while, of course, we are singing the praises of no team as they looked very, very good throughout that first game, of course, still have to keep an eye on Winston, the Kings of Amateur, coming in as that 30 seed. A lot of people, were questioning whether they really deserve to be seeded that low, but we'll still have some opportunities now that they've entered down into the 0-1 slot, playing against some other teams that are also of that similar record, and you definitely have to keep an eye out on Good Boy. Of course, that quadra kill at the end wasn't a real quadra kill, so to speak, but he was still able to, have a lot of impact over the map. We saw the dragon steal that he had earlier as well. We were talking a lot about Sudsy in the early game, but it was actually Good Boy who had the better end of the performance. So always have to keep an eye on that Winston squad as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good Boy having a great game. Sudsy also doing a lot of work in the team fights. I really just think I had a couple questions in draft about Winston King of Amateur. I really was not a fan of the early Jarvan there for Infectrix, but it felt like all of their lanes played pretty well, and this is definitely a team to keep an eye out for if they're able to just clean up the early game a little bit, not get pulled around the map so much, and find proactive plays for themselves.
Yeah, and we'll see if they're able to do that as we head into the next round of this open qualifier. Obviously, we were a bit busy here on this stream, so I'm not entirely sure how the other games have started to shape out, so to speak. So we're going to make sure that all the rest of the games are concluded in this round 1. They're going to go reset everybody. Actually, important note, thank you, production. Bog, the 5th seed, actually went down in round 1 as well by no name.
Wow.
That must have been an exciting game.
At that, Grapes.
Obviously, you were here to watch our game. Pretty exciting. Got a pentakill and everything. But that's another top-seeded team going down early on, especially with some of those important names. So remember to check out Unified 2, as well as all the other team streams. I believe Lena Shim has a sort of thread to kind of track the rest of the team streams as well throughout the open qualifier. So still a lot of League of Legends to keep an eye out for, but we are going to take a quick break before we get into the second round. But before we do so, want to thank one of our big sponsors here at Unified who is helping us out throughout this Proving Grounds circuit qualifier in Skulls. If you're looking to upgrade your gamer gear, look no further. Start your 2022 off right with official Unified Esports merchandise brought to you by Skulls. Hoodies, joggers, jerseys, armbands, and a lot more are coming soon. You have the skill, now get the swag. Skulls.com/collection/unified has everything you need. Gear up, game on. Skulls. We'll be back in a couple of minutes here with round 2. Don't go anywhere.